name is Gerald Costiga. I want to welcome you to this installment of our online training topics. Tonight is going to be a great topic, but before I get into that, I would just like to extend our thoughts and prayers to all the people who are being adversely affected by the wildfires here in California. There are a lot of Enagic distributors who live in some of the affected areas. So I just want everybody to really be thinking about them, and once these things kind of get managed and we're going into the holidays, just remember some of the people that have been affected by things kind of out of their control. And it's not a bad thing to extend a little helping hand, whether that be with a little cash to be able to go towards certain funds, or some extra clothing that you have, or maybe blankets or things, because a lot of people lost everything they have. Everything. Okay, so I just want to start with that. Okay, tonight's topic is actually a very important topic because it has quite literally created millionaires. Okay, so pay attention to this one. All right. So tonight's topic is sampling Kangen water. So we're going to jump right into this because I have a lot of stuff to cover and I want to make sure we don't go over in time. Okay, so we're going to jump right into this. Sampling the water, in my opinion, is a vital thing for a distributor to do. Okay, it's what I actually call the great equalizer, because it doesn't require any special skills. Okay, so you don't have to be like a super salesman or, be able to know all of the properties of water and all of the different technical type stuff. No special skills are required, okay? Anyone can learn how to do it. That's another thing that makes it really very advantageous to our distributors. It lets the water do what I call the heavy lifting, okay? Because the reality is, even if you are the best salesman in the world, okay, you're the best salesperson in the world, the reality is that you cannot talk a person into better hydration, okay? It's just, you can't do it. You cannot talk and talk and talk at somebody and then all of a sudden they become better hydrated. It just doesn't work that way. So realize that the water can do some of the heavy lifting in regards to letting a person experience some of the benefit before they ever even have to consider whether or not they're going to purchase the product, okay? And then one of the other really important pieces is that sampling the water to a prospect actually teaches potential distributors how to sample. Well, how does it do that? Because they're seeing what you're doing. And if they were to become a distributor, they would know how to do it because they've actually experienced it. They know the process. They know how it works. They know that it works because it worked with them. Okay? That's a really important thing to remember. Okay? So I want to give you a little history lesson when it comes to sampling water so that you understand that as you're watching this in November of 2018, that things were a lot different 11 years ago. Okay? Because we have made leaps and bounds of more effective water sampling over the past decade than when we first started. So I just want to kind of go over it real quick, all right? So, and here's some visuals. This right here is a 2-gallon container. This is actually one of the ones that I had from 11 years ago. This was one of the originals that we started with. Now, let me tell you what the problem was with this. First off, we could only find these things retail because we didn't know what we were doing. And no one was giving us any direction. That's the other thing, that everybody who has access to trainings like this, or the recent Las Vegas event, or the recent events that have been all over the country, okay, we didn't have those available to us. We didn't have experienced distributors that were really, telling us what to do, how to do it, when to do it, why to do it, all those things. We didn't have that. So we were shooting in the dark, man, hoping we'd hit the target somehow, okay? So we would buy these at regular water stores, and they were running us roughly $15 a piece. Now, $15 doesn't sound like that much money, but when you're starting up a business that you've just spent $4,000 on the piece of equipment that you're using for making your water, and you haven't started making any money at all, $15 is a lot of dough to sample one person. So for us to sample 3 people with tax, it was $50. to sample 3 people. Now I want you to really think about that. Think about that in the context of what we have today. $50 to sample 3 people water, okay? When we first started, it was a lot more difficult as far as timing was concerned, just because we didn't have all this dough to be able to spend on it, okay? So the containers were expensive. We found out that the spout, this little guy right here, this is not good, okay? This thing right here is not good for sampling water. Let me explain why. In order for this to work, this has to allow airflow in it. If you have this completely tightened down and you try to use this, it will stop working because the air that's in it will push it out, but then once it basically creates a vacuum, it can't do it anymore. The water will stay in there. You have to open this up in order to let it work. Well, as soon as you open this up, you just degraded the whole batch of water because you've exposed it to air, which is the number one thing that will degrade it the quickest. Okay? This also created what I call the fridge issue. One of our good friends, Denise Brown, yes, that Denise Brown, they have a machine, but prior to getting the machine, we got them some of the water so they could try it. And they put it in the fridge, just like this, and they shut the door. Now, unbeknownst to them, when the door shut, it hit this. And 2 gallons of water filled their refrigerator. Okay? So we learned a lot of lessons. So these, no mas. Okay? So those were expensive. They didn't work as good. They didn't hold the properties as good. So we tried some other things. Like this. This is a 5-gallon. No spout though. Haha. So we realized that, hey, you know, that spout thing was going to degrade it. Okay. Well, this had its own downfalls. One, again, to get the water out, you had to expose the entire batch to air. 2, water weighs 8 pounds a gallon. This is 5 gallons. That means this thing weighs 40 pounds. Dead weight, 40 pounds. So imagine some of your prospects. Maybe you're a little older prospects. Maybe you're a little older female prospects. Can you imagine what it would take for them to try to pick up this thing to fill a glass of water? So this, it didn't work very well. Then we discovered these. We were so excited. Okay? Why? Because cost effective. These ran about 50 cents each. That was great, okay? They were convenient and familiar. Now, what do I mean by familiar? Well, have you ever seen a container like this before? You have if you've ever bought any juice or milk or a variety of different beverages that come in a 1-gallon style milk jug container. So it was familiar to people. That made it nice too. However, storage was an issue. Why? Well, because this empty bottle has a huge void in it. So it's not like this doesn't weigh anything, but it basically took up a lot of space. Okay? Also, getting the bottles back ended up becoming an issue because of people being familiar with this style. It was harder to get them back. Why? Because most of the people, if they did drink milk or they drank some kind of juice or they drank something that was in a 1-gallon container, they typically did not save it and go to the farm and refill it under the cow. No. What do they usually do with them? In the recycling bin, right? Well, that's what was happening to a lot of the distributors when, they would give people water. They would want to get the bottles back, but all of a sudden the bottles weren't there. So that cost effectiveness started slipping a little bit because it's not cost effective if people are throwing them away. If you're able to reuse them, obviously, yes, it is cost effective. But if you're not, it's not, okay? So getting the bottles back. And also, shipping was expensive for people who are out of area to get these, not because of the weight, but because of the size. So when we used to order these, I'd get these in either a flat of like 50 or in a big box, okay? Well, the shipping cost, like I sent some to Colorado to one of my distributors, Joe Bartco out there, and I think it was $45 to ship It was the bottles were cheaper than the shipping was, and so it just wasn't. It didn't make as much sense. Okay, so these were good, but you know what? Sometimes good can be better, and so we took these and phew. And then we had these. Now I'm showing it like this because I want you to see exactly how these come, because each one of these water bags, they come pre-wrapped, individually wrapped, sealed, and everything else. This is what they actually look like. Now this is a bag that I designed, and the reason I did is because I didn't like the ones that were being introduced. I saw a few different water bags that were being introduced, and because I had already done a couple bottles and things like that, I had contacts that could do these. So I contacted them, and I just, found out, hey, what's a really good quality, and, I know things about the properties themselves. Some of the bags that were introduced, they actually had clear strips. So it was just clear plastic. Well, anybody who knows this water, they know that light exposure is one of the things that will degrade the properties. It is one of the least of the degrading, effects, but it will degrade it. So if you have a clear stripe across here, you're just letting light directly in there. So making this thing opaque by making it, completely solid all the way around. Now, the bottom is clear, but the bottom doesn't really get any light because of the fact that it sits like this when it gets filled up, okay? So the bags that were being introduced, they seemed like they were pretty cheaply made. That was one of the other things. Little tiny spouts. It made it hard to fill, even harder to pour. They didn't know the properties very well. As a matter of fact, there were some of them that the properties were diminishing almost as quickly as you were putting them in the bags. And I think the bag itself was one of the contributing factors to that. Okay? And the design flaws, like I said, with that clear strip, it just didn't make any sense. If you understand the properties of the water, it didn't make any sense. So I decided to make my own. And I wanted to make sure that it was highest quality. Obviously, if you've used any of the things that I've ever produced, then you already know. The things I do, highest quality. I insist on that because, we could do things cheaper, but you know what? The reason I'm with Enagic is because they offer the best product in the industry. And a cheaper product doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter. I would rather represent the highest quality and know that when I sell something to somebody that what they're getting is more than their money's worth, okay? Than representing some cheap piece of junk that's either going to break too quickly. Let me tell you one of the things I did in testing these, okay? If you guys know my son, Nathaniel, the original Kangen kid, he drinks a lot of water. So when I first got these, I took one, gave it to him, and I said, use this as your personal drinking bottle for the next month. And he did. And a month later, so every single day he was filling one of these, he was filling the same one up every single day for a month, using it as if it was, so he took it everywhere he went, it was in the cars. After a month, it was a little bit, you could tell it had been used, but there were no leaks. The water was still 100%, great as far as the properties were concerned, and it really held itself. So when that happened, I was confident that it was good, okay? So it's been professionally designed. Now, one of the interesting things, it's also been tested by other distributors and proven to maintain the properties better than these other bags. And that was done by my friend Bill Mabry. Now, Bill is a distributor for Enagic, but Bill is not on my team. Bill and I have no financial vested interest in one another whatsoever. We're not on the same team, but we work closely with each other. Well, unbeknownst to me, what Bill had actually done is Bill had bought some of the other bags that were available previously. When mine became available, he bought some of mine too, and without telling me, he put it through some tests. He actually made a video that I'll try to find it again and post it in the comments or in the the comment section of this training. I will try to post it in there because basically what Bill did is he tested the properties of the water in my bag, and what he actually discovered is that this particular bag held him better than anything else he had tried. So he was sold on this. Okay, so and I appreciate Bill doing that because it Now, obviously, if it would have been different and he would have said this was terrible, I'd be like, Bill, why'd you do that? But that's not what happened, so I appreciate it. But in all seriousness, though, I'm glad Bill did that, because it's one thing for me to tell you how great something is that I've made. I think you'd expect that. But when someone else who has no reason to say something positive other than it's the truth, I think that's a better selling point than, me telling you how great they are, okay? But they are great. And the nice thing is, too, this is how they break down. And I don't think anybody would think that this is disposable. If you give a person water in this, when they empty this thing out, I don't think they're thinking to throw this away. Why? Well, because it doesn't look like something you should throw away. It does look like something you should reuse. And I can tell you this, the same size box that 40 of these came in, 200 of those can fit in. Okay? It's a big difference when it comes to storage. So that was a really cool thing as far as the kind of the history of where we started, with the $15 containers to where we are today, which is with a, cost-effective. And also one of the things that's nice, if you actually check this out, this is promoting information about the water. It says stuff like antioxidant rich, eco-friendly, anti-aging, nutritious, and delicious. So this actually turns into a marketing piece for you as well as a functional water container. Okay? Another thing to think about when you're, because that's helping you in your marketing efforts. Okay, so that's kind of the history. Now let me jump into why sampling is important, okay? So I've got a couple of key points that I wanted to cover, and they should, I think, make sense to you, all right? So number one is the reality, folks, without electricity and a source of water, the product that we have is nothing more than an expensive paperweight. Okay, because without the electricity and without the source water, our machine doesn't do anything, because those are two ingredients that are necessary to get our byproduct, okay, which is what has the value. By sampling water, what we're doing is we're giving the consumer, it's the try it before you buy it type situation. It's also known as the puppy dog marketing approach. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with the puppy dog marketing approach, basically, this is an idea that was kind of created in the Dale Carnegie School of Business. And what the idea was this, is if you took a puppy, okay, and gave it to a family to try for 30 days, okay? So basically, you've got this puppy that you're just like, here, it's free to try for the next 30 days. Well, then over the next 30 days, what happens is that puppy becomes part of that family. The puppy becomes a member of that family. So when you come back 30 days later and say, okay, your puppy trial is over, it's time to either pay for your puppy or give him back. How many times do you think they're going to give him back? Especially if there's kids involved. I can tell you, 0. Okay? So it's allowing the consumer to experience benefit or experience the whys of ownership. Okay? Without spending the money yet. Now, it's very interesting. There was actually I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so I'll wait for a second, okay? But that's the puppy dog marketing approach. And so that soft sell, that more, here, try this, okay? Now, one of the other reasons that's really important, especially for us in Enagic, okay, is because the other guys can't and don't do it. The other brands that are out there, they do not sample water. Now, you might be asking yourself, if this is such an effective way for Enagic distributors to be able to basically market the product and lead to product sales, why wouldn't the other brands out there do this? And it's very simple. This is actually one of the things that you want to tell your prospects, okay? The reason that they don't is because they can't. And I don't mean that they physically couldn't fill something like this up with some water and give it to somebody. I mean they can't effectively sample the water because the properties of the water coming from their machines are not stable enough to last for days at a time. Most of them, just so everybody is clear on this, most of them, the property's stability will last a couple of hours. Okay? Not a couple of days, a couple of hours. All right? So obviously, if the beneficial properties of anything only last a couple of hours, you can't give enough away to give somebody, a sample for days, which is the reason that they can't do that. Okay, now, so there's a lot of things that sets Enagic apart, but this is a really big one. When a prospect comes to you and says, "Well, I was looking at this other machine by so and so," all you have to do is say, "Do they provide water samples?" And if the answer is no, which it will be, then what you have to tell them is, well, there's a reason for that. Because they can't. Because if they could, trust me, they would. That's the other thing you have to remember. If they could, they would. Okay? If they could charge $4,000 for the machines that they charge $2,000 for, do you think they wouldn't? The reason that they don't is because they can't justify that expense and that level of expense for the products that they're offering. Okay? So it's really important to understand that. Now, one of the other things that I think is really important for everybody to remember, okay, especially when you're talking about the differences between Enagic and these other companies. So obviously, the quality of water is something that you really want to be able to stress. The fact that we can provide them with samples is something that you want to stress. But you know what? There's things like this too, okay? There's things like this, that Enagic, on a monthly basis, has this available in both digitally and in print for some places. And it's got stuff like Tech Talk that tells them about the machines. Show me one other ionizer company, just one, that every month incurs a massive expense in order to provide information for not only the distributor base, but also their prospects. Show me one. You know why I can make that claim and make that challenge? Because it doesn't exist outside of Enagic. It's the level of quality and the level of commitment that Enagic puts towards this entire project that is one of the things that we as distributors cannot forget. We need to make sure that we're remembering these things and that we use these tools. Just so everybody knows, this is just like a hammer. It's a tool. But you need to know how to use it in order to be effective with it, okay? So if you don't know how to use it, you need to talk to somebody and figure it out so that you can start utilizing this, both the electronic one. The electronic one's great because it's the exact same thing, but you could send it to anybody in the world. Hello? You could send a monthly, and this is not shoddy. Super high quality, great stuff. It's got news about the different the different offices all the way. I mean, this one starts with a person in India, and then it goes and talks about one of our products, and then it's from Brazil, and then New York, and Thailand, and Taiwan, and Singapore. Seriously, do you think... was that last one Dubai? Huh, Dubai. Do you seriously think any other ionizer company out there, any other ionizer brand... Those are all offices that Enagic has at those locations, okay? Something like this is a phenomenal tool because it can be used in concert with and in conjunction with the water itself, okay? Now, I'm going to do kind of I'm going to do a little side note because I actually had somebody who contacted me specifically about a question when it came to the water itself. So I'm going to address this real quick. I'm going to read this verbatim just to make sure I have it all correct, okay? So, side note about water samples quality, okay? Specifically, fluoride. Now, to my understanding, and I want to preempt that with that, to my understanding, the things that I know, the ionic charge of residual chemicals in the water, like fluoride, they may not be removed from the water with the internal filter, but they end up exiting the machine from the bottom hose, not from the one we drink from. Okay? So, for all the people that are like, well, does it flow, does it filter out fluoride? No, not the internal filter. No, it doesn't. Okay? However, because of the ionic charge, when it goes through the process, it's getting diverted and dumped out that bottom hose, so it's not in the water that we are consuming. Okay? Now, there are pre-filters which will make the water even more clean and delicious. And if you're going to be sampling, you really do want to consider getting some pre-filters so that the water you share is the best quality. But here's the other thing. If you have a pre-filter set up, you can actually extend the life of your internal filter 1 or 2 times depending on what your pre-filter configuration is. So what I mean by that is if you have a 2 or 3 stage pre-filter, when your machine tells you it's time to change the internal filter, because the water quality is much better than what it would have been if it was just coming straight from the municipal system, you can actually reset the same filter and it will still be effective for you. So it's a way to actually kind of, save a little money while you're increasing the quality and the everything of the water itself. Okay, so that was the special question that I had posed to me. So there you go, my dear. I hope that helps. Okay, next thing, why it's important. It levels the playing field so that anyone can be successful. Now, there's a very interesting story. It has nothing to do with Enagic. This is an old television story. So back in the early days of consumer televisions, there was a very small company that was selling TVs, and I can't remember which brand it was for, but they were selling more televisions than all of the other sellers in their area combined. And the main company couldn't figure out how they were selling them so effectively. And what they actually discovered is they were doing the try it before you buy it type approach. They were allowing people to have a 1-week free trial of a television set. Now, this is at the early onset beginnings of TV when people didn't even have a television. Well, after 1 week of never having a television and then having one, they had almost a 100% sell-through. Why? Because the people, once they were invited into the world of television, they didn't want to give it up. They figured out a way to pay for it, okay? So that's another reason that it's important that you understand the power of this approach, okay? Also, it engages the prospect on an ongoing basis. You're seeing this person a couple times a week. They are physically interacting with the byproduct, which is the valuable thing that comes from our product. They're engaged, and engagement is one of the best ways to get a person not only to understand the value of the product, but actually to look at the possibility of the distributorship in the business. Being engaged, being part of the whole thing. And the other thing is it keeps the door open. If you lead with the business, if you go and start to talk to somebody and lead with the business and they say, well, I'm not really interested in the business. Well, how do you come back to them? How do you come back? Hey, you sure you don't want to look into this business? If you lead with the water, you can always come back. So it's you're hedging your own bets by getting people to basically, try the water and see what it does for them, okay? All right, so let's go into some of the how to sample, all right? So you want to start with your hot and warm market. It's also known as your circle of influence. Your mom, your dad, your brother or sister, uncle, aunt, best friend, basically people who will listen to what you have to say simply because it's you, out of respect for you, okay? It's also people who will forgive if you mess up the explanation completely. And if you're new, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. You're gonna, because we all did. We all messed it up. And it's just the way that it works. So that's why you want to start with people who are a little bit more forgiving, because that's how you're actually kind of honing your skill and figuring out how to do things. They're kind of your test subjects, and they're going to be a lot more forgiving than strangers would be, because we all know you mess up with a stranger, man, they've got no reason to give you a second chance. Whereas your family, they're already used to you messing up. And they're used to giving you second and third and fourth and 10th and 100th and 1,000th chances. So that's one of the reasons it's great to start that way. Also, being realistic, if you have a product that could potentially help somebody, who do you want to give that to or introduce it to first? Perfect strangers or the people that you care about the most and love the most? It's a no-brainer, okay? All right. So then the question is, all right, well, which water should I give them? Because we have 3 different grades of our drinking water, right? 8.5, 9.0, and 9.5. Well, I usually start with the 9.5, but I will closely monitor their initial reactions. And what I'm watching for is a severe detox reaction. Because if it's something that, because if a person experiences a detox reaction, it means they need the water more than somebody else who doesn't. Okay? It's their body's way of saying, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm finally being able to get rid of some of this junk that's been built up in me, and this is allowing it to happen. So thank you. Now, unfortunately, though, if that comes in the form of maybe, some stomach discomfort, maybe some diarrhea, or, something that you wouldn't necessarily view as a positive, you do have to understand that that is something that, you might have to explain to somebody, okay? So don't be afraid to tell them about the detox, okay? Now, if it's uncomfortable, you have really two choices. Either bring down the pH level of the water that they're going to be drinking, or, and this is depending on who it is, tell them to keep it and expedite the process. So when I say depending on who it is, if I'm dealing with somebody that I'm not real familiar with, maybe is a little elderly or has some issues to where the detox is hitting them a little bit harder and they're uncomfortable with it, I will bring the level down because I don't want it to be a discomfort thing for them, okay? But it is nice, though, when they do have something happen because they know the water is doing something, okay? That's one of the reasons I don't like to start with 8.5 is because, yeah, the detox can be gradual, but so can the impact. So I'd rather have them kind of like maybe have something that's uncomfortable so they know something's happening, and then we'll deal with the, adjusting that comfort level. But if it's somebody who I really know, let's say it's a close friend, and this has actually happened a few times, where I've given them the water and something happens. Hey man, I was getting these my stomach was kind of hurting. So basically what I would say is, yeah, that's great. Shut up and drink more water. Because what I'll tell them is, look, the reason you're having the stomach discomfort is your body's finally being able to get rid of some of this junk you've built up in your system for so long. It's finally being able to expel it. So a lifetime's worth of junk that's inside of you is getting kicked out of you within just a little bit of time. What, do you think you're not going to feel that? Of course you are. But let me ask you something. In all seriousness, would you rather get rid of the built up junk in your body faster or slower? Which one would you rather do? I think most people would rather get it out of them as quickly as possible, even if it's a little uncomfortable doing so, instead of, making the process take 2 or 3 weeks, when you can have it take 2 or 3 days. Okay? So I like to start with the 9.5, but be aware. And so basically, I always say this. I throw my prospects into the deep end of the pool. It's 9.5 feet deep. Okay? But I'm a damn good lifeguard, so I monitor if they're having any problems, okay? And if they are, I dive in and I come to the rescue and I make sure that they're good, okay? But just like you would probably do with some of your closest friends, when you see them struggling in the water and they're starting to look like they're going to drown, you just give them a little bit of a hard time before you end up actually helping them. So that's that's just me, I guess. And like I said, most people want to know that it's doing something. Okay, so be careful about starting at too low of a pH, because you're gonna limit the effectiveness of how it's actually helping. All right. Now, how much? That's a good question too. You want to figure out how many family members there are, and you want to try to get the entire household drinking the water. And let me tell you why. So, when Daniel, my sponsor, first started giving me the water, people who know the story, yes, okay, I dunked it out. Didn't drink it. I told him I was because I didn't want to hurt his feelings. And then finally my wife, smacked me around a little bit, figuratively, not literally, and said, what are we doing? Let's at least try this. So we did. The reality was the reaction that my wife and son had were more impactful on me than the reaction that I had, because my reaction was very little at the very beginning. It really was. Because I needed it. The sampling for me didn't work that well because my issues needed that full potency all the time, the out the spout type potency, to push me over my edge of really getting the benefit and everything. So the fact that if I would have been the only one drinking the water and my wife and son weren't, we would not be having this conversation right now. This would not be happening because I wouldn't be here. Because it didn't have a strong enough effect back then to get me to move forward. However, my wife and son both had pretty pretty dramatic things happen that I was like, it got my attention and it kept my attention. Okay. And it really was the thing that motivated me to move forward. So if you're going to sample a household, man, sample the whole household, because you never know. You might be looking at the head of the household as the decision maker or whatever, but it might be the effect the water has on somebody else that's more important to that person than themselves that will actually get them to move forward. Okay? So just remember that. Now again, how much water do you give them? Well, here's another question. Do they have any pets? Specifically cats and dogs. Okay? Why? Because if they have pets, you definitely want to get them enough water for their pets as well, okay? Now, the general rule for water consumption for a human being is half your body weight in ounces each day, okay? So the average family, a mom, a dad, 2 kids, they usually use, 2 to 4 gallons of water a day. And I'm not saying that they're drinking what they should be drinking, but that's typically, if they are drinking water, 2 to 4 gallons a day is what they're going to go through, okay? So just kind of like use that when you're calculating how much water you're going to need to give somebody, okay? Next is how often. You want to try to plan on getting them fresh water every 3 to 4 days for 2 reasons. One, that is about the length of time that the properties of the water will still be there and it's still creating some type of benefit with its ability to hydrate and, do those things. So, that's a good time frame. Every 3 to 4 days on the outset. Okay? And also remember that it's better to give too much than not enough. Okay? It's okay if when you come to drop off the next batch, if they have a little bit left over, what I typically will tell a person to do is if they have some left over is I'll say, okay, in your yard, I want you to pick your favorite plant. Okay? I want you to pick a really nice plant that you would love to see thrive. And I'll say, from now on, anytime you have leftover water, I want you to pour it on that plant. When I come, just pour the leftover, and then I'll get you a fresh batch. And if you have any leftover, pour it on your plant. And I've seen some real incredible results as a result of doing that. People's plants that, like right out the door, all of a sudden, man, they just start going crazy. Why? Well, it's because of higher quality of water. What do you expect? The plant's a living thing that needs water to live. So it makes sense. Okay? Now, here's another thing. You need to be willing to deliver the water when you start. Okay, I'm going to emphasize that, when you start. There is a process involved. I'm not going to go over the entire process because there's a lot of different places it's available. One of which is in the book Ride the Wave. Matter of fact, yeah. It is available in there and it really spells out exactly the process of each step of exactly what to do. Okay? But you do need to be willing to deliver the water because you want to make drinking the water as easy as possible when you start with a prospect. Because if you make it difficult for them at all, they will not do it. They're going to stop. And if you, don't try to pull them out of their comfort zone right out of the bat. Try to get them to come to your house to pick up. No, this is part of the gig. This is part of, if you're going to sample water, commit to doing this part of it because this will be much more effective for you. So if you're going to do something, do what's most effective or don't do it. It doesn't make any sense to do it if it's not being effective, okay? Also, you need to remember that when a person first starts drinking the water, they are doing you a favor by trying your water. So remember that and understand that's how the dynamic of the relationship is, that they're doing you a favor. That changes when they contact you and ask for more, okay? Because typically what happens is you'll get like 1 or 2 times of you sampling a person, you contact them, here, I'm going to bring you your water. You contact them again, I'm going to come by and drop off this new batch for you. When that all of a sudden changes and they initiate the call to you, hey, Jerry, I'm out of water. Do you think you can bring me some more? The dynamic of the relationship flips. It goes from them doing me a favor by trying the water to me doing them a favor by providing it for them, okay? So be aware if and when that happens, because it's a very pivotal moment that then you can start kind of pulling them out of their comfort zone a little bit, making access to that water maybe not quite as easy as it was before, because then you got to make them work for it. Because there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that because you're still helping them, okay? Now, some people ask me, well, what info should I provide people as I'm doing this? Well, first off, this right here is the sampling sheet. This right here is a sampling sheet that I created that basically it's tips and hints to how to get the most out of your samples. Pretty sure this is on the going6a.com website under the printable resource library. So if you want to get a copy of this, just go on there and, print it out and give it to your prospect. Basically it talks about drinking it, how to store it, using it with other beverage, for water-based beverages, what to expect, calling if you need more, and to save the empty bags, because they are reusable. So that's a really good thing to use. So that's the first thing that I do. And you also remember the reason that you want to give them this information is that you are providing them the best chance at experiencing benefit by letting them know what they should be doing during their sampling. Okay? So when it comes to full information, I like to say basic introductory info. Okay? Shot glasses of information. Not 55-gallon drums. Look, I know we get really excited about all this newfound information that we have, all this newfound knowledge. We want to flex our mental muscle and show people how smart we are and how, in tune we are and how ahead of the game we are because we know about this technology. It's real easy and it's real tempting sometimes to do that, okay? But when you're providing a shot glass of information, lets them wet their whistle, they get satisfied with that, and then their thirst will come again, okay? And you provide them a little bit more information based on what their response is to you of the info that you're giving them. Now, if you hit them with a 55-gallon drum, it's going to be like this, Patah! And then they get drenched. They can't breathe. They feel like they're drowning. It's too much information too quickly. So don't do that, okay? I've been guilty of it myself. I know. Because if you know me, I like to talk. If you have a question for me, my 5-minute answer could take 50 minutes. But I'll tell you what, you won't have to ask me another 20 different questions because I covered those too in my answer, okay? So I do have a method to my madness, so that is the way that I do it. So, give them information as it's pertinent, okay? So now, one of the other things is you need to let each time that you replenish their samples be an opportunity for you to give them a little bit more information. Okay? That's why, leading with the water is a really great way to do things because you continue to give yourself the opportunity to provide them additional information, answer questions, keep on giving them water, doing all these different things. Okay? Now, here's another one that's really important is you need to listen to your prospects so that you can determine the best approach. What I mean by that is, if you're talking to one of your prospects and they tell you how active they are, okay, well, that means you might need to give them even more water than you normally would because they're going to be needing it more, okay? Let's say they love to cook. Same thing. You might need to start giving them maybe a little 11.5, maybe a little 2.5, in addition to the drinking water that they could cook with. But they could start, trying it out with cleaning fresh fruits and vegetables or cleaning and sanitizing their actual kitchen with a non-toxic water product, which is awesome, right? So you need to listen to what they're saying so that you know how to advance. Now, along those same lines, though, just so you know, I normally only sample the drinking water, okay? But sometimes if it seems like it's called for, I will sample the other grades of water. Whether it be the beauty water, whether it be the 2.5 for the sanitizing water, whether it be the 11.5 for the cleansing water, whatever it needs to be. If I think that those waters will help my prospect identify benefit for them, then I need to be willing to do that. But for the most part, one of the main reasons I don't do those extras is because you have to remember that the more waters you share during sampling, the less punch the product will have if they actually get it. So if you've already had the chance to experience the 2.5, the 11.5, the 5.5, and all of the drinking waters, when you get your machine, what do you have to look forward to using? Nothing. But if all you've gotten was the 9.5 drinking water, when you get your machine, now all of a sudden you have access to the 2.5, the 11.5, the 5.5, and it now makes that machine more than just a water filter, okay? That's one of the reasons that it's important that you explain all the different waters and how it's used, because this isn't a water filter, okay? It's not. This is a medical grade water ionizer that happens to have an internal filter. This is not a water filter that happens to have an ionization chamber. It is very different, okay? And a lot of the other brands that are out there, they are water filters that happen to have an ionization chamber in them, where we are not, okay? Because we don't lead with our filter. We lead with our ionization technology and ability. We don't lead with the filter. Why? Well, because honestly, the internal filter of the Enagic machines, they're good quality, but they don't do this big scope of all these different things. Basically, it's, sediment, heavy metals, and chlorine. That's really what it does. That's why if you're really going to be sampling a lot of water, look into some pre-filters. Okay? Look into them. Why? Because it's going to extend the life of your internal filter and make the quality of the water even better. Okay? All right. Where am I here? Okay, be willing to invest in your prospect, okay? And what I mean by that is if you're not willing to invest in your prospect, don't expect them to be willing to spend $4,000 on a product that you're trying to introduce to them. You need to invest, but the investment is not just monetary, okay? You need to be willing to invest your time, okay? And I know a lot of people have regular 9-to-5 jobs or even not regular 9-to-5 jobs. So they're working a full-time job, but maybe they're doing a graveyard shift or something. There's so many different scenarios that people are doing, especially when they first start this, okay, that you have to figure out how to make time for certain things. But I can promise you this, if you're willing to make the time, it will pay off. It might take a little bit of time, it might take some effort. Now, actually, I'm not going to even say that. It will take some time and it will take some effort, okay? But it's worth it. All right? So be willing to invest some time. You need to be willing to invest some gas. It's going to cost you some money. You're going to be putting gas in your car more regularly if you're delivering water to people, okay? Understand that and realize that it's a necessary expense to do this. But it's also a business expense, so you will be able to write that off. So save all those receipts and everything, okay? You also need to work in the cost of the sample bags, okay? Because it does. They're not free. There was a lot of money went into designing those and creating them. So if you want to be able to utilize the best and have the greatest chance of success, then you use the best. That's it. Bottom line. Have some money set aside for some materials and some info. But start with stuff like this. Okay? Start with stuff like this. Why? Because this is free, man. I'm giving you guys access to the thing that I created for my team absolutely free. So utilize it. Use those different resources that are available. Then if you need to do stuff like get some brochures or, get some of the different magazines or things like that are available, that's when you do that. But when you first get started, hey, you know what? Use what you can and be as cost effective as possible, because I'm gonna break this to everybody. This is a business, okay? So you want to do this like a business, all right? And here's another one too. Don't forget to provide them with a personal drinking bottle, okay? Because it's going to give them something to drink out of, and if you play your cards right, it's also going to be a possible marketing or exposure tool for you. And here's what I mean by that. So if you were to have a couple of these laying around, and when you get a new person, you give them one of these as a personal drinking bottle, they start carrying this thing around, they're going to have other people asking them what this is, okay? Well, by asking that prospect what this is and them telling them, it's engaging them in the project. It's engaging them in the business, and it's promoting you without even trying. Okay? So something like this can be a tool that, yes, again, there's a cost to stuff like this, but if you can turn the cost of this into profitability, then it's a justifiable cost, and it's an okay cost. Okay? So it's important to remember that because I've had people where I brought them water back in the days when I was doing this, and when I showed up, the first thing they did is they took their bottle, they took it off, and they go, oh, good, I was out of water, and they just started drinking right out of the bottle. And I was like, ugh. Now, I always made it to where when I gave people bottles, I gave them the bottle. They were dedicated. I would use one bottle for one family. That's just the way that it would be. So I'd have a whole batch of bottles that were dedicated to this family. So, I would tell them don't drink out of it because they're actually, you're probably messing up the batch by doing that in the first place. But the reason that you want to make sure that they have a personal drinking bottle is because when I asked a person, why are you drinking it out of that? Why don't you use another bottle? Their response, and it was on me. They said, I don't have one. I was like, Jerry, what's wrong with you, man? You're going to bring somebody a gallon of water and ask them to take it with them everywhere that they go, but you're not going to give them something that is a reasonable, something for them to be able to carry around in this day. Because, carrying around a gallon of water like this, for a lot of people, they won't do it. If you went to a restaurant for lunch, would you take this in with you and put it on the table? Most people don't want to, okay? That's why having a personal bottle is much more advantageous than having a big 1 gallon jug or whatever, okay? So remember that. Okay, now I'm going to get into a little bit of technique. Now, most of what I'm about to cover is covered very in depth in the new Ride the Wave book. I should have pulled this out before. I'm not even going to. I got too many things back there. Okay, so I got my little dragon protecting it. But basically, in Ride the Wave, the 6th edition, this is covered very in depth. Okay, so it's fingers and strings is what I call this. So fingers are direct people that you are sampling. All right. So what you want to ask yourself is, how many fingers do you have? Now, for most people, you got this. Well, my recommendation is remember how many fingers you actually have, because you want to be careful of having too many direct samplers at one time, okay? And the reason is because what's going to happen is you're going to become a water delivery boy or girl, okay? So you don't want that to happen. Why? Because that's not what you're trying to achieve. You're trying to build a business, and this is just part of the process. So be careful with that, and I think you should adhere to what I call the 2-hand rule, okay? Which means no more than 10 fingers. Unless, of course, you are Inigo Montoya. Then you're allowed to have 11. Now, for the people who know what that is, you're laughing right now because it's freaking funny. Those of you who don't, I recommend you go watch The Princess Bride. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, so be careful with the fingers. Don't commit yourself to too many individual people. That means different locations that you're bringing water to, okay? So that's the fingers. Each one of those individual people you're bringing water to is a finger. A string is actually, it's known as anchoring or securing your prospect, okay? So what you're doing with a string is you're creating a string by sampling multiple people through one of the fingers. So basically it means, let's say that my son Nathaniel is the person I am sampling, okay? So I'm sampling him water. I'm going over to his place and dropping water off at his place. Well, then I start talking to him and I say, hey, do you have anybody that you think might benefit from this water or that you would like to get some water to? And he tells me, yeah, as a matter of fact, I do. I think my best friend, Isaac, would probably really like this water. So would his grandmother. Okay, cool. Do they live together? No, Isaac has his own place. His grandmother lives someplace else. Okay, fantastic. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring you water for you. And at the same time, I'm going to bring water for Isaac and for Isaac's grandmother. But you need to get that water to Isaac and have him get it to his grandmother. Okay. Now, I'm still only sampling. My effort is the exact same. I'm filling up a couple extra bottles. I'm going over to drop off the water to the same person I was going to drop off one batch. Now I'm dropping off 3 batches, and he's learning how to sample. Okay? That's where the strings, the anchoring is very, very, it's a very strong way to do it, okay? Because you provide the water, but the fingers actually are the ones who distribute it. And what that's doing is it's kind of teaching them how to be a distributor, how to sample water without them even knowing. All they think they're doing is just they're doing a nice gesture for people that they know by getting them water that they don't even have a machine for yet. Okay? Now, what happens then if Isaac's grandmother decides she wants to get a machine? Well, she's going to talk to Isaac and say, Isaac, I'd like to get one of these machines. How do I do it? And Isaac's going to go, I have no idea. Let me talk to Nathaniel. So he's going to go to Nathaniel and say, hey, how do I get one of these machines? And Nathaniel's going to say, well, actually, I don't even have one. I don't know. Let me talk to Jerry. I'll talk to him. So now when Nathaniel talks to me, I tell him, okay, so here's the deal. If you want to get a machine, then you can then ask Isaac if he wants to get a machine. And if he does, he can be the one that sells the machine to his grandmother. Well, he says, okay. There's a thing in sales called fear of loss. As soon as a person thinks they're going to lose something, they are motivated to do something. Okay? So Nathaniel tells Isaac, yeah, but if you don't want to be the person that sells it to your grandmother, she's already said she wants to buy it, I will go ahead and sell it to her, and then I'll make the commission off of the sale. Wait, you're going to do what? You're going to make the commission off the sale to my grandmother? Well, wait a second. I like this technology too. If my grandmother wants it, obviously there's something to this. Yeah, maybe I do need one of these machines as well. So Isaac says that to Nathaniel. So now Isaac wants a machine. So now Nathaniel has two sales that if he doesn't have his machine to be the seller to Isaac, he's going to lose out on two sales instead of just one. So now he comes to me and says, okay, I need to get one of these machines. So what does that do for me? That makes 3 machine sales from the one person that I was bringing water to. That's the power in it, okay? Now, it's really important that you look for associations, not relations, when it comes to the people that you're doing. So what I mean by that is like, you give a friend water who gives water to one of their coworkers, and that coworker gives it to their brother who lives in a different household, and that brother gives it to a family friend who lives in a different household. Here's what you don't want to do, okay? You want to try to avoid sampling different people who live in the same house. Why? Well, because if they decide to buy a machine, they don't need to buy multiples. They don't need to buy 3 machines. So if you're sampling 3 people who live in the same house and they decide to buy a machine, they're only going to buy one. Okay? So I'm not saying don't provide the samples for everybody, but I'm saying don't think that if you go to one location and you're bringing water for 5 people, that's not 4 strings. That's not a finger and 4 strings. Okay? It's 5 fingers is really what it is. Actually, it's 1 finger because it's that household. It's 1 finger. That's all it is. There's no string. There's no other fingers. That's it. Okay? So watch that. You want associated but not living together. Okay? That's one of the biggest things is that, not living under the same roof. Okay? Now, my advice to people is creating no more than 5 fingers with 5 strings at a time. If you do that, that'll be 25 actual people that you're prospecting and sampling. And that's a lot of people. Okay? It is. So if you're doing that twice a week, you're just think about the numbers. If you did 25 people in total or households in total, it could be as much as 3 to 4 gallons of water. So let's say this is it's roughly 1.25 gallons. So 4 of these is 5 gallons, okay? So let's say you had 4 of these for one family, okay? Well then, if you were sampling 25 families, you'd need 100 of these, okay? And that's why I'm trying to put this stuff in perspective for you. You'd need 100 that you're doing every 3 or 4 days. So you want to keep it in a manageable level, but always have people in the mix. You want to always have those popcorn kernels and in the pan, and you're applying the heat so that they start popping, okay? And also remember though, if you keep it at 25 or less, you are sampling that many people, but you're actually only doing the effort of providing samples to 5 individuals, because those individuals are the ones who are providing the samples in the strings. Okay, so just remember that and try to manage it, because I've had some people that are like, I'm sampling 67 people right now, and I'm like, really? Well, how many people have you anchored? What do you mean? Are you bringing that water? Are you bringing water to 67 people? Yes, I have no time for anything else. And I'm like, wow, man, that is not the way to do it. I mean, I guess it is, but if you do it more structured, you do it with more intention, then you will start getting results that are based in intention instead of luck. Okay. Now, one of the other things is people decide to get their own machine. You simply replace them with a new sample prospect until you have another 5 fingers and 5 strings. But just keep it manageable. So as soon as you have a person, and one of the things I love to do, so let's say I'm using these, and I'm giving Nathaniel the, 4 of these for his little family and everything. So every 3 or 4 days I'm coming over there with 4 of these. Well, that means I'm going to give him 8 in total. I'll have 8 dedicated to him because when he gives me those 4 back, they're his. Well, if he decides to buy a machine, I'm going to tell him, okay, Nathaniel, you know what I want you to do with those bags of water? I want you to clean them up real good, and I want you to reuse those for your first sampling. Because I don't want him to, I've already spent the money on this. There's no reason for me to take this back from him and then make him spend money. Why? Because I want him to be successful. So if I've already made the financial commitment to him with getting these bags for him, then why not let him utilize those to get his thing going? And then he'll want to know how to get bags anyway so he can sample more people. But it gives him the ability to get started right away, okay? So that to me is one of the best ways that you can start sampling. Like I said, there's a lot of different methods, but anchoring and doing this, the fingers and strings, this is how I explain it. You can call it whatever you want, but I think it's a good way to do, especially because it's, if you can keep your business on one hand, it's going to make it a lot easier for you. 5 fingers, 5 strings. It's very easy, okay? That's one of the reasons that I like to do things that are easy and duplicatable, okay? So let me give you a little summary here. So the water is the foundation of our main products, and we have the ability to share it without breaking the bank. That's one of the other things that's actually really great is we're not paying a lot of money to be able to give out samples. It's not like we're buying bags of water and then giving them to people. No. Yeah, we're buying the bags. We might be buying the information to be able to give to people, but the water itself, which is the thing that actually has the most value, is the thing that is the least expensive for us to be able to share and provide people, okay? So it's without breaking the bank. So sampling, it's an excellent way to expose prospects to the water, also to the culture of Enagic, the mission, and important information as well. It's a way to expose them to all that. It also sets the groundwork for a prospect to become an effective distributor by teaching a simple, duplicatable process and the fundamentals of sharing water. So those are the things that I think if you, like I said, water sharing in Enagic literally has made millionaires. Okay, so don't discount it. I know some people are like, oh, I don't share water. Well, that's great, man. You're such a good salesman that you don't need to. Well, I'll break this to everybody. The rest of the world, they're not that good of salesmen. They're not that good of salespeople. Okay, most people are not good at sales. Okay, they're just not. So if that's the case, you need to figure out a way to be able to put effort forth that has the same type of return for you as if you were a seasoned, experienced salesperson. Okay? Hope that makes sense. All right, let me give you a couple announcements. Now, this is important, so please pay attention, all right? So for the next 24 hours, the products on the Going 6A website are on sale. There's a code. This is the code. Very simple. Use this code to save an extra 10% off of your entire order, including the reduced price factory seconds of the Congacell and Conganizer bottles. There's super limited quantity on those, and I wanted to give you an idea of basically what happened. So we had a batch of these, and if you look at this right here, if you can see that little wonky line, for whatever reason, just some of them got a little wonky, and I don't know why. But the way I do things is I cannot sell this at a full retail price because to me this is not sellable. But I don't want this to go to waste, so they're being offered at a drastically reduced price, and but the quantities are super limited. Okay, so if you go to the going6a.com website, click on store. It's either store or shop. Store, I think, and then they're available. Now, the only thing that the 10% will not work on is if you order the Ride the Wave through Amazon, because I wasn't able to tie those together. So I apologize for that, but everything else that's on there, the discount will apply to. It ends tomorrow, okay? So it's available tonight. If you want to get them, they're there, okay? Also, just to remind everybody that Ride the Wave 6 is available, that you just go to the going6a.com website, same thing, click on the store. At the very bottom, there's some links that'll take you to Amazon. Now you can either order it for the digital copy as like a Kindle type book, or a printed copy, whichever your preference is. And it's available all over the world. That's the other thing I want to make sure people are aware. It's available in like 13 different markets, like for direct. So it's available in Japan, it's available in Europe, it's available in Canada, it's available all over the place, okay? So if you're in an area that's outside the United States, you could still get it at a much lower price, because I think they actually print it in your country and then mail it to you, so it's a lot less expensive, which is one of the reasons that I went that route with the new version, okay? Make sure that you receive notices by subscribing to our email list. Again, going6a.com. Just click on the subscribe link. Do what it says to do. It's an opt-in email. Give your information. Boom. You'll be on our mailing list, and then you'll get notifications about all the stuff that's happening. Our next live training is going to be on Monday, November 19th at 6 o'clock p.m. We are going to be discussing holiday business building tips and hints. Now, this is great information as we officially enter into the holiday season. You do not want to miss this, because I'm going to give you some tips and tricks tips and not tricks. Tricks is definitely the wrong one. Tips and hints of ways that you can maximize the holidays for your business building, okay? And one last thing, special reminder for those in the Riverside, Orange, and San Diego counties. The next live True Health seminar at our location in Murrieta is going to have a brand new presentation slides and enhanced properties demo. Is going to be Tuesday, November 20th. So it's not tomorrow, it's the following Tuesday, okay? Now, we're going to be introducing some new tests in the demo, and we're using a brand new PowerPoint that we'd like to have some people come and tell us what they think about it, okay? Because if enough people like it, we're going to release it to everybody if they like it and want to use it, okay? But we want to get more input from people to know if there's any changes that we should make prior to introducing it. So we're going to be taking some promotional pictures and video during this seminar on the 20th. So if you want you and your team to be featured as attendees and participants, be sure to join me, my son Nathaniel, again, the original Kangen kid, both Bill and Emily Mabry, and our friend Bob Brown to experience the true difference of a Enagic. Okay? All right, folks, thanks for joining us tonight. We hope that this information helps you and your team members, and we look forward to seeing you at the next live training, which, don't forget, is going to be on Monday, November 19th. So next Monday, the 19th, is going to be our next one. So that's all for now. Thank you very much. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great night.